Hello everyone, this is Chris with Sticker Fab. Today we will be doing the installation of the 21 Offroad Mudflaps for the 2021 and up Ford Bronco. Fits 4-door vehicles and 2-door vehicles. Also fits Sasquatch, non-Sasquatch vehicles, and just about every configuration of rock rails they are. Right now what I have on the vehicle are the WeatherTech Mudflaps. Now these are an affordable solution. They come in fronts and rears, sold separately. They are available on our website. Now, once I installed them and they got dirty, they kind of matched up with the factory trim, which is really good. But a lot of people didn't like this big gap right here. Now, through that gap, you might get some water and whatnot, but in general, it's done a pretty good job of protecting the side of the vehicle from actual rock chips. We also have the Sticker Fab lower door protection because a lot of the rocks and whatnot wind up striking this area, because you can see the door kind of tilts downwards and the angle is a little bit more aggressive than up the side of the vehicle. So let me get what we need to get this installation done, and then we'll meet right back here. Alright, so one of the things I'll admit is it looks like a lot when you first pull everything out. Is a 13-pound kit. Comes with brackets, bolts, Allen wrench, all 4 mud flaps. But every mud flap and every bracket is labeled accordingly, whether it goes on the front of the vehicle, the rear of the vehicle, the left side, or the right side. It does include an Allen wrench, so that's one item you do not need. I do have a ratchet here. I have 2 sockets. I have an 18mm and I have a 3/4. The 18mm honestly fits better on these rear tow hooks, which will need to be removed when we get to the backside. I also have a smaller ratchet and I have a Phillips head on that, because this will be needed to remove the stock bits in the front. Removing the fasteners in the front is common, and I have removed them and replaced them with these to install the WeatherTech Mudflaps. So let's look at a vehicle that hasn't been modified and give you the tips over here. Now, I fought these little plastic fasteners for a little bit. So these are the little ones I'm talking about right here. What you want to do is just gently turn them. Alright, so lefty-loosey, we're barely putting any pressure down on it. And if you are really gentle, it'll start to unscrew. Now these are just plastic automotive fasteners. That's why you can't put a lot of pressure on the screws, or you'll just push it right back in. So, like I said, not a lot of pressure on it. We'll put this one back in. Just being very gentle with it. And that's how you get them to remove. Alright, now if we look at the directions, you need to remove the wheel arches in the front and back. So when I installed the WeatherTech, I was actually able to get behind this liner without taking the wheel arch off. If you need to take the wheel arch off, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clips. Now, if these clips are dirty, they might be a little hard to remove, but other than that, you just push them into the down position or back, and then you can remove it by just giving it a firm tug. So on mine, I'm probably not going to remove the front. I'm trying to get slip in right there. If you need to remove it, but when we get to the backs, you will need to remove those because a mount actually goes into the sheet metal. So let's kick off this installation. One of the most important things you can do for yourself is not to lose control of your hardware. There's a lot of hardware. We are starting on the front right. So you need your front right bracket, you need your front right mud flap, you need the smaller Allen wrench, the smaller Allen bolts, 4 of them, along with the smaller washer. You need 2 threaded inserts. Like I mentioned earlier, the holes that we are using are this one, and reusing the stock hardware in that position. You will need to remove this in order to pull the fender liner back, especially if you are not removing the fenders. So the first thing you want to do is take these threaded inserts, pull back the fender liner, and slip them right into these positions. Make sure the threaded part is on the back side, as it will screw through and then clamp down on these. I just wanted to note that after you get those 2 threaded inserts mounted, you won't need to get behind the fender liner anymore, so you can replace the OEM fastener back in this position. Take the appropriate bracket. Now it makes a shape like this, if you can see that. And then you take 2 of those Allen bolts and you go into these threaded inserts. I would hand tighten them first before you grab that Allen wrench. Might have to wiggle them around a bit, make sure they're going in the right locations. If you're not good at threading them by hand, you can put that Allen wrench on them to try to get it started. But I definitely wouldn't tighten them all the way down initially. I would kind of even out the tightening. When you're happy with the location and you need a little bit more leverage, make it into a right angle and go down a little bit tighter. Now you're just kind of feeling this out. We know you're strong. We know you could probably rip that right out. Sorry about the noise. If you are working in Southwest Florida, you want to get an early jump on the day before it gets too hot. It's already hot. So the threads are on the back of this bracket, and this bracket is kind of angled this way towards the fender liner. Now that's going to make installation a little bit more difficult for the actual mud flap. However, it also pushes the mud flap nice and flush against these items. I would start with the bottom and realize that you're going at an angle, so try to watch that angle and match it up. I will actually get the Allen wrench behind this. Try to match that angle. Realize it is going in at an angle. It is not going in perfectly straight. And then I have that threaded a little bit. So I'll do the same to the top. Make sure it's lined up. Make sure I'm going in at a slight angle. Again, holding the Allen wrench like this until I need more power. Those metal brackets are pretty strong. You can crank down on those. So if you ever need to take these off while you're off-roading, all you have to do is take those 2 off and this automotive fastener, which would be a lot easier than redoing the whole install. So take your stock fastener and put it back in here. Of course, this is the one from the WeatherTech. Yours will have that little Phillips head on it. And that's it for the front. Just repeat it on the other side. Alright, now we are at our right rear corner. And I mentioned I'm going to use an 18mm there instead of 3/4 because that was tighter. I wish there was something that felt a little bit better than that. We have to remove this bolt, and then this automotive fastener just pulls right through, especially with the weight of the tow hook. Once we remove this, we'll assemble our plate, and then we'll sandwich the plate in between this and the factory tow hook. I'll put that automotive fastener back through both plates, and then do those bolts. Alright, we do off-road, so that's what a dirty tow hook looks like. The 2 bolts and then the automotive fastener. Let's check out what hardware we need. Of course, we use the mud flap, but then we have this big bracket, smaller bracket, and then a straight bar. All of those are labeled rear, right, for this application that we are working on right now, this back rear corner. You need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 large Allen bolts with their washers that have the bigger holes, of course, that fit them. And then one of those small ones that we were working with earlier with the smaller diameter hole. We need these 2 nuts. And that's pretty much it. Let's assemble this bracket really quickly. We need our larger Allen wrench and 2 of these larger bolts. The flat side goes against here, and then we put our larger bolts through it. Of course, those have the washers in them. Let's hand tighten this. Let's grab another one, hand tighten it, and we'll start cranking down with our Allen wrench like I always do when there are multiple bolts. Tighten one a little, tighten the other. Let's make sure that it's kind of flush against the back of this, not angled up or down. If there was an angle to it, it might make installation of the actual mud flap at the very end more difficult, as the holes would be further apart and wouldn't match up very well. Now we can go in here and pop off that rear fender. You're pretty much making them point straight down or 90 degrees away from the fender. It's funny how the other one came off a lot easier. So, I like to show you guys all of this in real time. Looks like this one clipped just a little bit. That one actually broke. Everything else looks good. So it looks like I need to crank this one past 90 degrees. I guess all of them just a little past 90 degrees to pull them out. You can see right there. That's what they look like in the position they were supposed to release. Alright, now I'm going to prepare this area for the small bracket. Pretty much goes right here. I don't think this was a metric bolt, however with the paint on it, what I found to work is 10 millimeters. I'm going to remove this bolt completely. And then this guy was giving me a hard time. It's the same type of automotive fastener you find in the front ones, the little Phillips head. So we have to be really gentle with it. Now make sure you find a Phillips head bit, a Phillips bit that fits really well. You don't want to strip this little plastic piece. I'm just having to be so gentle so I don't put too much force on it or it won't back out. And then as I put less force on it, you feel like it wants to strip. Pull this out. You will need to reuse it. What I found easiest to do is go ahead and work with the smaller with the bottom hole and that plastic fastener. The reason for this is that this bracket is at an angle, so it makes it difficult, and you probably won't even be able to see this, to get the little push part back in. Well, I wish it was push in this application, but it's actually screw in. So I'm going to try and grip that as much as possible. Get it started. I've pushed the main part of the fastener all the way in, flush as much as I can against this fender liner because I didn't want it to back out. So don't mount this bolt yet. Go ahead and work with that little Phillips head insert down here. It's just really hard to get to. See, and if you twist on it, it's going to pull that fastener back out of that hole. Now, you have to realize most of your support will come from this. You just don't want this part to fall back out. And I'm just going to push down on it. If I ever want to get that out, I'll have to just probably rip it out. Now, you're using the smaller Allen in this one. Now let's move on to the bottom bracket. Alright, the fun part, getting back under the car. Like I said, we're sandwiching this plate of course this bar goes to the front of the vehicle. Sandwiching that plate in between the vehicle and the tow hook. We'll hold all that up. I'm going to get that automotive fastener first. This is my personal preference. Make sure those holes align properly. Push up on that so it kind of holds it there. I wouldn't totally let go because it does have a little bit of weight to it, so it might fall back down. Line these, make sure stuff doesn't fall in my eyes, and tighten. We can crank back down on them. Alright, now all we have left is putting the mud flap on and putting that fender back on. Of course, we need the mud flap. We need 3 of the larger Allen bolts with the appropriate washers that go to them, and 2 of these nuts. Make sure that the mud flap sits behind that metal bar that you just installed, the lower bracket. I'm going to barely thread this on. I'm making sure that it goes right into it. It doesn't cross thread. For these, you drive the bolt with the washer through the back. This is the part that's going to kind of test your alignment. Make sure it goes through the bracket and is willing to go through that mud flap. So I'm going to use my larger Allen wrench. I'm going to crank it down so it threads into that mud flap. And then I'm going to put that nut behind it. Once they start threading just a little bit, I'm going to move on to the next one. I don't want to crank down too early and leave this guy all alone. Got to slip that nut behind there. Make sure it doesn't cross thread. And start cranking down a little bit. The nut doesn't have a flat, completely flat surface on the back of it, so it should grip into that mud flap and not spin. And then don't forget to tighten this guy back down. And last, let's install that fender again. Yes, that fender flare. Okay, make sure everything is still aligned the way you took it off. Push it firmly in there. And crank these back down. Which means they'll face the rear of the vehicle. There you have it. We have installed them. Of course, finish this up on the other side. Let's look around the vehicle, see what's going on. Alright, our other Bronco is gone right now. It has a plastic bumper, but as you can see right here, there's a gap. On the other one, there might not be that kind of a gap. So they do include these pads that you can custom cut to this shape so that when they rub, they don't scratch on each other. If that's something that bothers you, you can go ahead and have that part cut out, and it attaches with adhesive, so just clean the surface and then mount it right there. Alright, so check out our 21 Offroad Mudflaps fully installed. Gives it a nice wide look in the rear of the vehicle, nice wide stance. I like how it pretty much matches the trim on this vehicle. Looking good in the front as well. Now this is not a stock wheel and tire combo. These are zero offset Icon wheels, and these are BF Goodrich Mud Trains KM3s. At full lock, they just barely come into contact. There is room to shave that down a little bit. Because it's barely coming into contact, I'm actually going to drive it around for a week or so and see how much contact it makes by the end of the week. These wheels and tires are fairly new, so they've got about the most amount of lug on them as possible. So I understand what people may dislike about the WeatherTech Mudflaps. It is a little bit more affordable, but if you like this complete full OEM look, I would check these out, and now you know how to install them. So thank you guys for all your continued support. Please like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already, and hit the bell notification icon for the latest and greatest things we are coming out with for the 2021 and up Ford Bronco.